Strings of characters aren't the only things we can print. Oftentimes we'll print integers, decimal numbers, and more complex information as well. These are referred to as data types. Line 4, for example, says to print the number 5. When the code runs, it would run line 1, ignore it because it's a comment. It would run line 2, but we don't really know what this line means yet, and we don't really need to know yet. It would run line 3, which again is a comment, and then it would run line 4. Line 4 says print 5, and so we see it prints the number 5. 5 is a whole number, an integer, which means it has nothing after a decimal point. It could be positive or negative. 5 has a data type that's different from hello world. Where hello world was a string of characters, 5 is an integer. 5.1 is another kind of data type. It's a decimal number, which in Python we call a float, which stands for floating point number. Don't worry about what that means for now. As our code continues to run, it runs line 5, which is a comment, so it ignores it, and then runs line 6. Line 6 says to print 5.1, and so it does. This code continues to run to print something even more complex. It runs line 7, which again is a comment, so it ignores it, and then it runs line 8. Line 8 says to print date.today. You might notice that date came from right here. The line earlier on that we said we could ignore for now was to tell Python to understand what date means, pretty much. Python naturally understands strings of characters and integers and floating point numbers or decimals, but it doesn't as naturally understand what a date is. So when we say from datetime import date, we're basically saying go out and get the understanding of what a date is and then keep that in mind as the program runs. So when we get to the line that says print date.today, Python draws from that understanding of what a date is, figures out what today is, and then prints what today is. The day when I copied this was September 17th, 2016. Now, most often, we don't print or use values like those directly. Typically, we store them in variables and then use the variables in our programming. So here, instead of just printing 5, I'm printing my integer. Before, I created my integer and gave it the value 5. This basically says create a variable called my integer and set it equal to 5. We'll talk about variables more in the next chapter. This code runs similarly to the code we saw before. Line 1 just takes care of loading an understanding of what a date is. Line 2 is a comment. Line 3 creates the variable my integer and gives it the value 5. Line 4 is another comment. And then line 5 says to print my integer. When it hits that, the computer goes and looks at the value of that variable. Here, that value was 5. And so print my integer prints the number 5. How did it know to print the number 5 instead of printing the text my integer? Well, if we wanted to print the text my integer, we would have had to enclose it in quotation marks like we do with hello world. If we had written print quotation mark my integer, it would have actually printed the text my integer. But because we're not using the quotation marks, the computer knows to interpret my integer as a variable. That's also why it's highlighted in blue in all the places where it appears. When the computer tries to print a variable, it looks for the variable's value. And again, this is all the topic of the next chapter. Then as the program goes on, it does the same thing for floating point numbers and for a date. It runs line 6, ignores it because it's a comment. Then it runs line 7, creates a variable called myFloat, and sets it equal to 5.1. Line 8 is a comment. Then line 9 says to print myFloat. It looks up the value of myFloat, finds that it's 5.1, and so it prints 5.1. That works for more complex data types as well. When it runs line 11, it creates the variable myDate and sets it equal to date.today, or today's date. Then when it runs print myDate, it finds the value of myDate, finds that it's today, and prints 2016-9-17 for September 17th, 2016. So, lines 3, 7, and 11 are what we call assignment statements. They assign some value to some variable. Then after that, we can use the variable and get its value out when we need it. Now here that didn't make any difference. It's no easier to assign a value to a variable and then print the variable than it would just be to print the value in the first place. The importance of this is that we can have a single variable name that changes its value over time. Imagine, for example, you have a variable called my balance, which represents a bank account balance. The value of the bank account balance would change over time as you make purchases or receive income, but the idea of having a balance is consistent. There always is a balance, it just might have a different number. So the variable name my balance stays the same, but its value can change over time. We'll talk about all of this more next chapter.